It's your man, P. Skip, and welcome to Into His Courts, the greatest sports talk show on Christian radio ever.
Amen.
That's because we the only one.
Hey, listen, no one likes a hater, bro. No one likes a hater. So I got my man with me, got my fellas with me, T-Mac.
Hola.
Chill Will.
Gracias, gracias, amigo.
Listen, man, I know it's old news, but it still has got to be talked about. Kareem Hunt has signed a one-year deal with none other than the Cleveland Browns.
Wow. No way.
Wow.
No way.
Cleveland Browns.
Surprise. Yeah.
I'm telling you.
That's great news.
You will take a chance. Professional teams will take a chance on talent. They'll take a chance. When you have enough skills, enough talents, you will get another chance. The difference between him and Ray Rice is Ray Rice's skills was on a down slope. This man's is on the up.
Man, hold on.
But don't get me wrong. It's a bunch of stipulations in that contract that if this brother spit on the ground, he's fired.
Yeah.
Hold on.
Don't get a parking ticket, you're gone.
Wait a minute, man. NFL, what kind of presidents y'all setting? You telling me that you can kick a female and you can still play in the league, but if you take one knee during the national anthem, you ostracize into courtrooms and we'll settle with you out of court. The NFL really ain't caring about image at this time, man.
Nah.
Because what are they saying? You can kick a female. That's okay, come on.
Yeah.
But if you go to one knee, that's over the top. That's too much. We can't take it. We can't associate with you.
Yeah, yeah.
Come on, NFL. Come on, NFL.
Let's just talk about that one point right there. Is it just me, or am I the only one that's old enough to remember that that's the way that everybody used to do the national anthem? Everybody used to take a knee. They would all kneel down and do it during the national anthem.
Yeah, I don't remember that, but
I remember that.
I remember that, but I think context is important as well. There was an understanding that the knee was in honor of the flag and the country. And while the actions of Colin Kaepernick are identical to that, I think the context of him doing it, which I think he's justified because he was talking about the unjust treatment of African Americans that have gone on since the 1600s here in this country. Now, that treatment is not the entirety of the diaspora's experience. It's but a chapter in it. But to your point, Will, it does seem to be very, very inconsistent. Hypocritical even.
Did you use the H word?
For there to be physical assault caught on tape and, corroborated by witnesses, and that is not necessarily condoned, but forgivable, but somebody protesting the ill treatment of a group of people in the larger society is excommunicated from the league in perpetuity. That is
it's out of order. Amendment right as an American. Freedom of speech.
Yeah.
You're not an American if you're in the NFL.
But I guess the question becomes, does one's freedom of speech extend to a private enterprise? And the NFL is a private enterprise. Surprisingly enough, it is a non-profit organization, but that's a whole other conversation. But it's a private organization that's run by owners who are proprietary owners of it. Does that impact one's free speech at all?
No. That's a constitutional right. The Constitution governs the whole nation, not just the South, not just the North, not just the East or the West, not just the cold states and the hot states, the left-hand people or the tall people.
Not just public institutions.
The people of the United States. That's a constitutional right. I use the word hypocritical But, you could even take that even further and say, I won't even say some of the other words that I could use, but, man, that's not a good look for the NFL.
Mm-hmm.
Well, here's the thing. The NFL, I don't really believe, has cared about their look for a long time. All they've cared about is this is a business and how much money can we make. The look doesn't matter because they don't care so much about their look because the fans will still go and watch it. They'll still go to the games. They're still buying the NFL pass. They're not losing money on their look.
Yeah.
Until we make them hold, or we hold the NFL accountable by saying, we're going to withhold our money until you have better character, better morals. Until they do that, they don't care what we feel or how we feel.
Two thoughts on that, and I think you're on point with that. I'll add these two thoughts to that particular perspective. A few years ago, Missouri's football team had some issues that it appeared as if players were being treated unfairly with some seemingly hypocritical disciplinary type things. The players protested, the African-American ones, were saying, well, hey, if this isn't rectified, we aren't going to suit up for the games for the rest of the season. After that first threat, there was a calculation of how much money would be lost by the university's athletic department. They rectified the situation. That collective protest did its thing. On the NFL piece, and this is more for the sake of, devil's advocate to a degree, when Colin Kaepernick was, first banished, if you will, as the owners colluded, it was he and a teammate, Eric Reed.
When the owners did what?
Colluded.
Oh, okay. I just wanted to make sure I heard colluded.
When they colluded.
Okay.
Is that a higher level than collaborated together?
Right. Collaboration means that we're just working together, and it could be a number of different things that we could do, building schools for kids. Collusion has an intonation of negative, nefarious, shenaniganization type of deal.
Love that word. Can you say that again?
Shenaniganization of some stuff.
Oh, so is that why they settled out of court?
Yes, indeed. But
I got you.
But
okay.
I think what the NFL tried to do was almost like a splitting of hairs. Colin Kaepernick and Eric Reed were the victims of not being able to get contracts. Eric Reed just didn't get talked about as much as Cap because Cap, started it. But just last year, the Carolina Panthers signed Eric Reed. So I think the NFL owners might have used that to say, well, hey, we're not totally banishing players. We had another guy that took a knee, and we signed him. We just don't think that Colin Kaepernick has the same skill sets that can be beneficial, wink, wink, to a team, which is why we're going to not sign him. We have both players taking the knee. We're covering ourselves by signing one, so you can't say they just kicked players to the curb for protesting the ill treatment of African Americans because we signed this cat. We just didn't sign Kaepernick, and that was freedom of choice and executive decision. Wink, wink.
Hogwash. Pure, unadulterated hogwash.
Deep fried crapola.
I'm glad I'm here with pastors. Because if I wasn't here with pastors, I would go and say a couple other words. I say some stuff that we all can relate to.
Remember, this is a Christian show.
And the other one start with an S.
Well, thank you for not using
that compound word.
We so appreciate that. But listen, what I love about, with all this being said, is, God is a God of second chances.
Mm-hmm.
And he's a God of grace.
He is.
And I thought about, when they signed Kareem, I thought about King Hezekiah. Mm-hmm. When the prophet had to go and tell him, like over in 2 Kings chapter 20, starting at verse 1, he says, in those days Hezekiah was sick and near death. And Isaiah the prophet, the son of Amoz, went to him and said, thus saith the Lord, set your house in order, for you shall die and not live. Then he turned his face toward the wall and prayed, saying, remember now, O Lord, I pray how I have walked before you in truth with a loyal heart and have done what was good in your sight. And Hezekiah bitterly wept, and it happened before Isaiah had gone out of the middle of the court that the word of the Lord came to him and said, return and tell Hezekiah, the leader of my people, thus saith the Lord, the God of David, your father, I have heard your prayer and I have seen your tears. Surely I will heal you. On the third day you shall go up to the house of the Lord, and I will add to your days 15 years, and I will deliver you. So here we have God saying, listen, Kareem, or them saying, the
Browns,
the league saying, listen, we're done with you. But here you have this man, he probably had a praying mama or grandmother, some praying folks in his family, and said, Lord, give my boy another chance. The God just added another year to his contract, and if he does well, all is forgiven, and that boy's probably going to get at least another 15 years of playing football. But it's because, one, he probably had to turn, they probably said you get rid of all them folks that's around you and get rid of some responsible people that can keep you out of this foolishness. We're going to keep some people around you that will help you make good decisions. Had to turn his back on some of them folk that his boys, his homies, they can't hang with you no more if you want to make this money, if you want to be in this league. But he had to turn his back on some things and then cry. I'm sure that boy cried like a baby when he found out, I'm out of the league. I'm doing what I love to do.
Yeah, at the beginning of his prime.
What I believe I'm created to do and what I'm great at. This is what I've been using to take care of my family, to bring my family up. And I just lost it over some mess.
Yeah.
He's a God of another chance. He's a God of grace, man. And I also think about how the fact that, through all of this, I'm sure God said to him, listen, look here, boy, my grace is sufficient for you. What all you're going through, the grace that I'm going to give you, the grace that I've placed on your life, is not only going to give you another chance, but if you stick with me and stick with the grace, it's going to make you a perennial all-star. You're going to rise to the top of the league and who you are and what you can be. And you're going to be an example for others who make a mistake that realize that just because I made a mistake, I'm not done. So I really look at this as a whole bigger picture than, wow, he got another chance. I'd be like, thank God he got another chance. Because there's some of these guys that you look at them and you go, what are the skill set would they have? When you look at some of these players that are not in the league and are out of the leagues for a different level, they get in so much trouble because that's all they know, that's all they can do. My youngest brother had a friend, Henry James. I don't know if you guys remember him, but Henry James at one time had the record for the most threes in one game. I think he hit like 11 or 12 at one time in one game. Got out of the league and went to selling drugs because this is all I know is basketball.
Yeah.
But once they don't want to hire you, once you don't have that career, that reason for discipline anymore, all restraints are cast off, and now you see so many NFL players in prison, so many basketball players, baseball players in prison. They just don't know what to do with their lives outside of what they believe they were created to do.
Right.
They don't have a plan B. And those of them who do end up being still around the sport that they've been a part of, whether it be in newscasting, whether it be in the front office, whether it be HR, PR, whatever, they still try to stay in that culture, try to still stay in that lifestyle. But when these guys just go from, I'm a star to a nobody, that's a mind shift that they don't know how to handle. And I think this young man at an early age, I think it would have completely ruined his life.
Yeah.
What had the potential to.
It is a blessing.
No
I do
doubt.
thank God for blessing this young man and his family with the opportunity for him to still grow and fulfill his full potential as an athlete and as a man. Thank you, Lord, for that opportunity.
No doubt.
But what you were talking about in some of these professional athletes, I would say this goes throughout employment in society.
Wow.
In the music industry, you have one-hit wonders.
Yep.
And sometimes you have in the movie industry, some people have a big movie and they don't have another one. It's hard to go from having a #1 song in America to being the teller at the local bank.
Man.
And that's tough to deal with. That's a lot to deal with. So a lot of people can't deal with that on regular, small jobs, being a president of a bank, being an elected official, being a principal at a school, being a police officer. They deal with that same amount of grieving, but the difference is the lifestyle that you get accustomed to living is easier to adjust to when you're further down the food chain.
Right.
You can do and maybe even put 2 or 3 things together and still have a good quality of life. But it's hard to move out of that mansion with the swimming pool and the 6-car garage and the foreign cars and the beautiful women and the gold and the champagne to move back over in the neighborhood.
Yeah, to the duplex.
It's a tough adjustment, and people have a difficult time with it, but rich and famous people have a much harder time with it, and sometimes they self-medicate themselves with drugs and alcohol, and that's how all that come together. But I'm saying that to say that that's why a relationship with the Lord and being spiritually foundated and have family that truly love you and not just yes people around you helps you to make that transition, because we talk about the ones that don't, but there are a whole lot of them who do.
That make the transition. I think there's two poignant add-ons to that. A couple years ago, Bob Lanier, Bucks great center, Detroit Pistons, Milwaukee Bucks. I think he might be
NBA Hall of Famer.
Hall of Famer.
Top 50.
He was
top 50.
He was talking about, he was a director of player engagement, player personnel for the NBA, and he was talking at a conference, and what he was saying was the adjustment that he works with players after they get finished playing to get reacclimated to society, as you were just kind of describing. And he said on average it takes professional athletes, particularly football and basketball, 3 to 5 years to adjust back to being a regular citizen. So in addition to all the accoutrements of that lifestyle, the big mansions, the travel, all the extravagance, you also have this, celebrity factor where you go and everybody knows your name. Hey, that's so-and-so. Hey, that's so-and-so. Now you have to go to Walgreens and go get some milk and bring back home, or go grab some eggs.
That celebrity.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And you have to make that adjustment. So that was one. Number two, I didn't mean to bump you there. Number two, I went to a concert, my wife and I, a few years back, and the singer Peabo Bryson was, in concert. And, I didn't know that his musical accomplishments had spanned as many different genres as they did. So in between the different songs and stuff, he would just kind of entertain the crowd and talk to us about different things that are going on or whatever in between songs. One of these conversations, he said, well, my wife, sometimes she comes with me when I'm on the road, but, this time she's back, back home because she had to work. And I guess he was looking at some of the people in the crowd's reaction to, you're this big singing star. Your wife, she working? He said, yeah, my wife has a job. She said, because what you all don't realize in looking at our faces was, he said, what you all don't realize is that fame isn't real.
Wow.
And it was like, whoa.
Say that again.
Fame is not real.
Can you say it a little louder for the hearing impaired?
Fame is not real.
Wow.
And when he said we had the exact same response, caught the revelation of what he was conveying right then. And this is Peabo Bryson, whose career has spanned some 40 years saying this to us. So it underscores this point of you can be at a certain pinnacle, but you need to stay grounded to reality. And, a relationship with God is the best way to do that, and having supportive folks to keep you in reality, because things that are above and beyond that we see through mass media and other channels, is not all that it's cracked up to be, and coming from one who is looking from inside the frame out, communicating to us that it's not even real.
Wow.
Do you remember, just an understanding of just how that adjustment has to be made in your life? Recently, I think it was last year, the actor from The Cosby Show, the son-in-law,
Yeah.
I can't think of it, Jeffrey Owens, yeah. He was working at a grocery store.
Trader Joe.
Trader Joe's. And the news media got on it and just kind of slammed him.
Yeah.
Like, really? You're a great star and now you're working at Trader Joe's? He's like, listen, my family still got to eat.
It was a social media person that put him on
Right.
blast first, and the media caught wind of that social media
Right.
post.
And so he's like, listen, I never said I was broke. He just said, for the most part, I just want to make sure I don't ever get broke.
Right.
So I got to get a job. I got to get insurance. And if I can get it this way and still keep my bread,
Yeah.
Whatever I got to do, I'm gonna do. I don't care how you feel about it. I think he's also like a teacher too, isn't he? So he's doing his thing. And so I'm like, hats off to you, first of all, for making that transition and not having to hit bottom before you get up.
Yeah.
Exactly.
But I think the hardest thing, if I could be honest, I think maybe the hardest thing for a lot of these guys is, how do I change from being, like you said, everybody knowing me to still everybody knowing me, and then going, but what are you doing that for?
Exactly.
There's a pride thing. There's a status thing that goes, dude, 2 years ago, you was just in that new Benz. Now you're driving an Impala.
Yeah.
What's that all about?
And for those that are able to make that transition, it's an esteem thing as well. Me going from the top of the world to a couple notches down, the fact that I'm still here in existence, I don't lose any value of who I am. I don't lose any stature as being a man. I'm still I still have presence and understanding and dignity, courage and confidence, even in this particular state. I think we might have shared this before. When Muhammad Ali was first sent to jail for refusing to go to war, he was talking with someone who had asked him, well, hey, what happened to your entourage and all the folks that used to be around you, at the pinnacle of your career? He said, well, hey, once I went to jail, a lot of those folks kind of fell off. They didn't come around anymore, didn't return my phone calls and stuff like that. So even my driver that I had, I don't have him anymore. I drive my own car. And then the person he was talking to, she was the one that was telling the story. She was like, oh, man, they took everything from you, Muhammad. And he said, no, I still have me.
Right.
And so that sense of self, that grounding, that is not only your anchor, but it becomes your personal lifeline to yourself.
Yes. Let me just make this comment, because I think this is a good segue. We're talking and having conversations about falling from grace, but it also works in the exact opposite, which is the situation with a lot of these athletes. They come from very humble beginnings, not having anything. Family structure, like all of us black folks have people in our family that's dealing with being a black American. They come from that. Some of them come from the core of that. And then all of a sudden, you're making millions and millions of dollars. That has to be managed and dealt with emotionally, psychologically, just like falling from grace.
Right.
Agreed.
And if you can't manage it, you will have problems. That's why the constant in that is your spiritual foundation.
No doubt.
And your family.
Right.
That's the constant in that. So it works both ways. It's just not falling from grace. But if one of us win the lottery tomorrow, we're going to get a phone call from people that we didn't normally get phone calls from. And that has to be managed and dealt with. And it's a certain segment of people who are going to have an expectation for themselves of how you should interact and deal with them.
Right.
Yeah.
So all of this stuff, and I've seen both sides, all of this stuff needs to be managed.
Yeah.
But the key to it is love.
Yeah. No doubt. No doubt. You know, I'm going to read that scripture, 2 Corinthians chapter 12, verse 9. It says, and he said, my grace is sufficient for you, for my strength is made perfect in weakness. Therefore, most gladly, I'd rather boast in my infirmities, that the power of Christ may rest upon me. And we really have to get to a place of understanding, listen, no matter how many mistakes I've made, no matter how many bad decisions I made, as long as I'm still looking to God, his grace is more than I need to get me out of whatever I'm going through. And in my weakest moment, that's when he shows up his strongest for me. But it's a complete leaning on, a total dependence on him. It's not, well, how clever can I be? What kind of skills do I get? What kind of grind? It's my grind that's going to get me over. No, it's not your grind. It's not your, it is the grace of God. And as Christians, we so often don't rely on that. We think it's work. It's work.
We think it's man.
Right. It's works I got to do.
We think it's man.
You know, and when you get to a place where, man, God, I messed it up again. I messed up here. I made a huge mess of this. I need your help to get me out of this. And that's usually the biggest problem for most people. They won't humble themselves low enough to ask for help. I didn't need your help when I was on top. I'm not going to need your help when I was on the bottom. I've been on the bottom before. I know how to get back up. Listen, it don't work like how it worked for you to get up there anymore. It's a different type of work once you get up there. Because in people that you had to leave to get up there are now looking at you going, I ain't here for you on the second trip. Them folks you had to cut off, yeah, bro, you cut me off. I'm not here for you. So you can't ask me for nothing. You know, so you really have to be able to look at who you are in Christ. And I love the fact that both of y'all said it, and you know I agree with it, and that is you got to have a foundation in the Word. You got to give your life to God. Give your life to God and allow him to lead you and guide you to where you're supposed to be. Hey, listen, y'all. Thank you again for being a part of another amazing episode of Into His Courts. I'm your man, P. Skip. Got T-Mac.
What it do?
And my man, WW, Chill Will.
All right.
We'll see you next week, same bat time, same bat channel here on Joy, 1340 AM and 98.7 FM every Tuesday. Tuesday night, 7 p.m. to 7:30. Right here. Y'all have an amazing week, and we'll see you next time.
Bam.
Peace.